So the security clearance process is awarded for persons are awarded after the completion of that favorable background investigation and adjudication of what they found out as part of that investigation. And again, they'll normally go back in this investigation about 10 years or not more than 10 years. Sometimes it might be 5. So what they're going to do is require the person who needs the security clearance, to complete an SF-86. And I'll show that to you in a minute. It's in your best interest to be as thorough and accurate as possible. They'll take that SF-86 and the investigators will start working. It's usually 1 or 2 investigators, and they'll start gathering information and collecting data, writing it down, finding people to interview, and finding references above and beyond what you've already provided. Now, in the adjudication, that's an examination of all that investigative data, and they're going to make a decision on whether or not giving classified information to that person is an acceptable security risk. And again, they're going to err on the side of national security interests. If there is a risk, your security clearance could be delayed or denied. So it's up to you that if there are red flags, that you do due diligence to provide data to mitigate that risk. And I'll show you a little bit more about that. Now, for the defense contractor, their role is to submit people for clearance levels. Once those clearance level security clearances come back, they provide access and manage that access to that classified information. And it's only after that security clearance determination is made and a need to know is assigned. That should be some sort of justification. And the contractor or that cleared person who has that security clearance now must sign a non-disclosure agreement. And it is pretty detailed. Now, the first step that the FSO will have to take upon providing somebody with initiating security clearance investigation is to prove that they are U.S. citizens. There are many different ways to do that. I just listed a few. And so if you are asked to provide proof of citizenship, you can bring these in, and the FSO will work with you on determining, on providing these in and providing a statement that you are a U.S. citizen so that they can go forward with that security clearance request. Okay, this is that SF-86. And again, it's automated, but it would behoove you to get records together immediately if you don't have a clearance, or even if you do have one, you're going to get re-investigated. I'll give you an example. My dad was in the Army, and I moved every few years until I was 18 years old. And then when I joined the Army, the recruiter came to my house and wanted to help me process for my security clearance. Even though the investigation goes back 5 or 10 years, that's a lot of years for somebody who has moved around a lot. And if you're young like me, I don't keep records. So I had to go get those records from my parents and from others. And it is a lengthy process. So they'll look at, for those of you who have more experience, they're going to look at all your employment history during that past 10 years, anywhere you've got an education, anywhere you've worked, lived, and then they're going to want references of fellow employees, supervisors, teachers, administration, friends, neighbors. And so that becomes a rather large list with addresses, phone numbers, and proper names. And then the investigator will conduct records checks, and they'll look into financial history, police records, if there are any. So you can see that this becomes a rather, about a 2 or 3 hour task, or maybe even more, depends on how much time it takes you to get those records together. So the facility security officer who initiates that security clearance, one of the things that they're going to do is ensure that fingerprints are submitted for you, and that you sign medical and all other release forms that kind of authorize that investigation. They will also be reviewing your SF-86, and the whole and the purpose of that review is to make sure it's done accurately and completely. And if any of you are a new FSO, your job is not adjudication or investigation. Your job is just to collect that data and help the applicant ensure that it's complete and accurate to prevent any delays. And I always recommend that you let the investigators and the adjudicators make determinations, but submit everything. And then you can expect a certain degree of privacy, even though the FSO will be reading it. As you submit this, other people will be getting information from it, but they are required by law to protect that data, no matter how sensitive it is. And types of investigations have changed over time, and now we're just discussing tiers. And this just lets you know that there are different types of investigations depending on the security clearance that you will be undergoing. Now, the investigative coverage, the agents, you may be subject to agents just going through your records, looking for automated sources. They may actually go in person to they will go in person to your references, places you went to school, worked, or lived to gather information. They'll conduct interviews with the people that you listed as references and maybe some additional people as well. Not everybody will undergo a polygraph. It depends on what type of clearance you will be going under. So here's the fun part, the adjudication. These are the exact categories that you will be filling out for your SF-86. And it will also be the same categories you will be, that the investigators will be looking at and that the adjudicators will be considering. Additionally, these are categories that will be used after you get your security clearance, as we are to report on each other and on ourselves if we get any red flags in these areas. This is a lot of information. And the SF-86, investigation and adjudication, that all covers these areas. I do explain them further in some of the training that I provide, what allegiance to the United States is, foreign preferences, and examples of it in some of those books that I have out there. Just not enough time to discuss them right now. The important thing is, though, that subjects who fall under this criteria, if they raise any red flags, you get an opportunity to mitigate that risk somehow. So there are situations where people have actually committed crimes, used drugs, sought professional counseling or other types of treatment. And then when considering a person for the clearance, the adjudicator will take that information in mind. For example, if you had counseling, if there's been a lot of time since the last incident, if, it depended, you were coerced into doing something. And so I would recommend, getting things in place if you know that you have something on your record and you've mitigated that, to include that in your submission packages. And so if you have red flags, it's not always bad news. Being underprepared is bad news. Being prepared helps that adjudicator make a more informed decision. All right, so temporary eligibility, it used to be called, again, that name changed. It used to be called, I forgot what its name. Anyway, it means that you are eligible to work on classified information until your final clearance comes in. And that means, like, if you have a top secret temporary eligibility, you can work in top secret and below. However, the temporary eligibility may be removed or not awarded if there are red flags. And so a lot of companies will hire you until you get your clearance and put you on another task. And that's a good position to be in. But if you are hired and this temporary eligibility comes through, you are able to perform certain tasks on that classified contract. I've seen actually one of these get approved 12 hours after I submitted it. So sometimes you might be able to start work right away, depending on whether or not they find anything on their initial parts of the investigation.